So my instructions are that since there was no break between the previous talk and this one, that we were allowed to start 15 minutes later, and we'll continue 15 minutes on into the break that follows this one. So just to let you know. Of course, you can always vote with your 2 feet. It's a rule of open source, and I believe for all presentations. Because this one is going to be the weird talk, probably for the conference. I mean, every conference needs a weird talk. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
You're obviously here, so yes, so you agree. This has to do with an uncomfortable topic, which is deception. And so for most of the weird talks that I give, I will begin with a disclaimer, which will point out my lack of expertise in this subject. So if it feels too uncomfortable, you can always dismiss it by saying, well, perhaps Linda doesn't really know what she's talking about. So I'm promising you not only that it's going to be weird, but it will probably make you feel a little uncomfortable. Because deception, after all, is just another word for, well, what is it another word for? Lying. Oh, lying. So my message is, I think this is a binary state. That consciously or unconsciously, all the time, we're deceiving others, and we're also deceiving ourselves. That is, we're trying to convince others or ourselves of something that is not true. And what's not there is the extra little piece to this message, which is that there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. I'm sorry. So, we know that we estimate all the time. You thought this was going to be about project estimation, right? Well, it is. We will get there. We will make a connection to something useful before the end of the talk, I promise. But we do this estimation process all the time. We estimate what we're going to do, our behavior. There are people whose business it is to put together a lot of information about our behavior, in particular, how long we're going to live. So if you want to talk to an expert, if that's something that you estimate, now that's something that's begun to bother me lately. And of course, I'm a lot older than most of you. In fact, as I look around the room, I can probably determine that I'm the oldest person here. So I do think about this a lot. But what we know is that we all do something very interesting, even when faced with data. We all believe that we're about 13 years younger than we are. Now, I know you're saying, and you will continue to say throughout this talk, oh, well, other people might. I can believe that other people might have this problem that Linda is talking about, but not me. I'm realistic. After all, I'm an intelligent person. Well, wait, let's take a poll here. How many intelligent people in the room? Yes, of course. Yes, we have lots of intelligent people here. And because we're intelligent, we believe that we are rational. We're rational thinkers, and we make rational decisions. So especially in the face of data, we would be rational. Well, yeah. So you wouldn't be the ones to believe that you're 13 years younger than you actually are. Those are other people, especially old people. I know a lot of old people. Was that a factor in your decision to get married? The data that people collect about how successful marriages are on the way to the altar, where you're thinking, well, 50-50 chance. But that's other people. That's not me. That's not me. I know my marriage will succeed. Do you think this has any application to software development? It's unfortunately the case that this is part of our hardwiring, and what the evolutionary biologists tell us is that there's a good reason for this. There's a good reason why we might say, oh yes, this is a characteristic of other people, but not me, because we are optimistic. Now, imagine, if you will, sitting around the fire in the cave, you and Fred and Joe in the Stone Age, pondering whether or not tomorrow you'll go out and hunt. And one of you, being the realistic one, the intelligent one, the rational one, says, you know, I was there. I saw what happened. Well, that was Tom, and, well, he's not with us anymore, is he? But that won't happen to me. If they truly understood the odds, the risks, they'd still be sitting in the cave, and we would never have arrived. So it's fortunate for us that our ancestors were optimistic, unrealistically optimistic. Otherwise, we would never have had the chance to appear and do our own optimistic estimations. So it had survival benefits. Those who were too realistic never got out of the cave. So we don't want to be too disdainful of this property. We want to embrace it. Now, of course, remember, at the end of the day, we believe we're still talking about other people. We, of course, are rational, but we, of course, are not overly optimistic. This is even true for the really intelligent people, scientists. Oh my gosh! Scientists deceive themselves. Someone pointed out that the history of science is littered with a series of little bumps. Because most scientists want to hang on to whatever their theory of the day happens to be. They have a lot invested. So in the case where some other scientists might come up with data that would prove their theory wrong, what's the behavior of a typical scientist? Is it to say, oh, yippee, I will embrace this data that shows that I've been spending the last 20 years barking up the wrong tree. Oh, wonderful, thank you so very much. No, it's to disdainfully look at those reports saying, oh, but clearly these experiments have flaws. Clearly, I will set my graduate students to work to show all of the problems that exist in this other experimental data. And to hang on as long as possible to those beliefs that have become so dear. Yes, even scientists. I remember reading a review of a paper when I was a mathematician. The comment from the reviewer said, you know, I wouldn't even believe this, even if it were true. Wouldn't believe it even if it were true. I like this quote from Max Planck. A new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents. and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die. It's the old people coming in again. And a new generation grows up that is familiar with it. Someone pointed out to me the story in the Bible. The children of Israel, it took them 40 years to cross the desert. It doesn't take that long. What were they doing? They were waiting for the old generation to die. We're talking about a severe paradigm shift here. Not all of us are comfortable making those admissions. The way we've been living our lives, the things we have ascribed to and held dear as true, to give those up, it's very difficult. So if we are truly rational, here's an experiment that was done with data about someone who was being considered for a position. Now, this candidate under consideration had some positive attributes and some negative attributes, as would be the case for all of us. So the subjects in the experiments were given this data in two different ways. The first group was given all of the positive attributes of the candidate first, followed by the negative attributes. And the other group had those attributes in reverse order. Negative first, and then positive. Well, if we're truly rational, should it make any difference? It's the same set of attributes after all. What do you think? Well, I wouldn't be talking about this, I suppose. It wouldn't make a difference, but clearly it did. Those who looked at the positive attributes first were more likely to hire the candidate, to make a recommendation, hire this person. And it was exactly the opposite for the others. That's not rational thinking, is it? Our estimate of the ability of another person, can that be affected by the order in which we receive data about this person? Oh, surely not. They must have included some subjects who were inadequate in some way. Those are those people. You wouldn't suffer from that same bias, would you? No, I didn't. Some social psychologist who had to keep his graduate students busy noted that there are 3 lies in 10 minutes of every conversation. So how long have I been talking? I can't imagine how that research was conducted. We're just sitting in the corner, listening behind the projector screen to random conversations. I don't know, the methodology would really be fascinating. And of course, this experiment has been repeated hundreds of times. It's a demonstration of the 80-20 rule, that whenever you ask a group of people, are you above average? Well, we could try that out here. How many of you are above average? Well, yes, of course, about 75, 80%. Well, you might say, well, of course, you're the ones who came to this conference, and you would be above average, wouldn't you? Yes, absolutely. So there was an interesting variation of this that someone just pointed out to me. It was in Scandinavia, Sweden, I think. So the question was, are you above average in driving ability? 80% said, oh yes, I am above average in driving ability. And some of those responders were in hospital because of an accident that had been caused by their driving negligence. Interesting result. That 80-20. It's like Garrison Keillor and Lake Wobegon, where all of the men are, no, the women are strong and the men are good looking and the children are all above average. We all believe that we are above average. And of course, there's a lot of interesting study going on now about online dating. Well, no, we won't take a poll about online dating. It's interesting that the online dating population, now that it's large enough to really study, is younger than those who are not online. Isn't that interesting? They are younger by about 13 years. And there are little peaks. So there are more people than would be expected who are 39. Or 49. Hardly any who are 40 or 50. And in general, they're lighter in weight, more educated, and they love extreme sports. And it seems that there is a tendency to notice differences in the sexes, that the men are wealthier and the women are thinner. Interesting. I don't know. I haven't tried online dating, but maybe you have some stories that we can share over the break. We believe sincerely that deception or lying is a bad thing. But what we notice is that we find ourselves telling our children, well, if you answer the phone for me, tell them I'm not home. Well, now we're all connected by cell phones, so you don't see that one as often. But, oh, this is a gift from grandmother. Well, tell her that you love it. Your Aunt Jane made this present for you for your birthday. Well, write a note to her and tell her that it's just a wonderful gift. It's absolutely what you wanted. Well, some people would claim that that kind of deception is necessary. So how many of you have partners at home who have bought a brand new expensive outfit and have paraded around in the expensive outfit saying, well, do you think this makes me look fat? Deception can have its place, I think, in keeping the wheels of society moving smoothly. It reduces the bumps in the road, so to speak. Surely that can't be a bad thing. We have trouble estimating when it comes to the food that we eat and the beverages of various kinds that we might be drinking. So one of the distortions that we make automatically is that we notice that glasses that are taller hold more. If we're asked to estimate the amount of the beverage in question, we will say that the taller glass holds more. And this experiment has been repeated even with professional bartenders. So these two glasses, for instance, hold the same amount. We know that if there's a container on the table and it has to be this close, if we can reach it, regardless of what it is, whether it's carrots or M&Ms, that's my downfall, dark chocolate peanut M&Ms. If you can reach it, you will eat more. If you move it so that you have to stand up and take a number of steps in any direction in order to reach that bowl of carrots or M&Ms, the amount that you will eat is reduced by 50%. So Michael gave us some recommendations for dieting. Here's the simplest one, is just move it. Make it so that it's not so easy to reach. However, when asked at the end of the experiment, those subjects who were in those various settings, they were unable to tell any difference. No, it doesn't make any difference to me whether the bowl of carrots or M&Ms is on the table or whether I have to take a few steps in order to get a hold of whatever it is. We don't even see that ourselves. But of course, that's those other people. Those people who are not as rational as you. We also know that if a food on the menu is given an elaborate description, chocolate, decadence to die for, we will pay more money for it, we will eat more of it, and we will say that we enjoyed it more than if it's just called chocolate cake. And all the while, we underestimate the effect that all those things have on us. What happened on 9/11? I was in an airport. Well, I spend a lot of time in airports. No one was telling us anything. We're standing there waiting at the gate. And all we knew was the flights kept being delayed and no one was saying why there were delays. There was no information anywhere. But lots of rumors, lots of discussion. And finally, the nice representative from the airline said, I think all of you people should just go home. We're not going to be flying today. And we were astounded. What could this be? No flights today? So it wasn't until I got home and started looking at the television along with everyone else, looking to see what had happened. Now, I don't know what message you take away from this picture, but I was surprised at the message that most people that I interacted with after that point took away from this picture. I finally got an airplane on Saturday, and in fact, I went to Minneapolis, yes, to talk to the users group. And on that last flight, it was Phoenix to St. Louis to Minneapolis, I was on a 767, which is a pretty big plane, with 9 other people. It's the only time I have ever boarded a plane when the flight attendant said, sit anywhere you want. Interesting. Where did we sit? We all sat together. We all sat together. All of us together toward the front of the plane. There was no first class or business class. We all sat together, window aisle on both sides. And it's the only time I've ever been on a plane when everyone on the plane was talking to everyone else on the plane. Well, where were you? And where are you going now? And to hear from all of those people, I will never get on another plane again. When I get home to Minneapolis, I am staying on the ground. The message was flying. Flying is dangerous. Now, I don't know about you, but the message I took away was tall buildings. It's interesting, isn't it? The different viewpoints. So that's the message that most people in the U.S. took away from that incident. And it changed their estimation of risk. They suddenly decided it's too risky to fly. So, they're so intelligent. What was their conclusion? What was their decision about transportation alternatives? They decided to drive. Oh my God. They decided to drive. Now talk about dangerous. Talk about risky. Yes, air travel decreased. Driving went up. So did accidents. And as a subset, fatalities. Enough people died in automobile accidents after 9/11 to make up for more than 3 times the number who were killed on planes on that day. I've often wondered, is this what the terrorists had in mind? Someone at the table said, I've got a great idea. We'll run into these buildings. The Americans will then be afraid of flying. They'll get on the road and they'll do each other in. Brilliant. Brilliant. Because they succeeded. They didn't have to do anything. This is absolutely risk-free from their point of view. Just turn them loose. They'll get in those SUVs and they'll go at it. Our estimation of the risk for us and our families was all wrong. Yeah, it's all wrong. Yeah. We're not very good at risk estimation. Smokers, for instance, when handed all the data about how dangerous smoking is, well, they do exactly what you've been doing. Oh, all of those experiments. Oh, she's talking about those people. It's those people who have to worry about the dangers of smoking. Not me. I have an uncle who smoked every day and he lived to be 95. Actually, I don't. I just threw that in. However, when it comes to looking at the same odds for winning the lottery, oh, we all think we're going to win the lottery. Look at the odds there. Oh my gosh. We're going to win the lottery, but are we going to die of smoking or have a heart attack? Absolutely not. We don't do a good job of processing that data. We distort it. We not only lie to each other, we lie to ourselves. And in fact, that's why we are so good at lying to others, because we lie to ourselves that we're lying. It's kind of a meta thing, isn't it? Yeah, we deceive ourselves about deception, and we're very good at it. So when it comes right down to it, what we are stuck with is our hardwiring that says, yeah, we're afraid of certain kinds of things, but we can't control what is immediate and what's most available. So it's why a lot of people are afraid to fly, because they fear loss of control. Somehow when they're behind the wheel of a car, there is the sense, it's distorted, of course, and inaccurate, the sense of control, while in an airplane, no, it's gone. What's immediate? People in the United States saw that television night and day. They saw those planes hitting the Twin Towers. What stayed with them was the planes, the planes, the planes. Was available to them. And so it gets in the way of our being able to give an accurate estimation of risk. So what's the connection with software development? It's a tendency that we have to be overly optimistic. So we tend to think that our estimates are accurate and that we can code, test, develop, whatever it is, and that if someone points out to us, well, you know, on the last project, we were late and we do exactly the same thing that we've been talking about. Oh, that was then. And we do a very good job of explaining it away. There are variations on this experiment that have been repeated with lots of different kinds of estimators. And even when the estimators are shown the results of their previous bad estimates, in the hope that perhaps they can learn and improve, they are all able to explain it away. Oh, well, the reason that last estimate was off was because, well, that won't happen again. This time, this iteration, this release, this project, this time. I have a friend who's been married 5 times. And I often ask her, Susan, how is it that you know that this time it's the right one for you? And her reply is always the same and has been for the last 5 weddings, is that I just know. I just know he's the right one for me. I hear that from software development teams. We know, we just know. Things will go well. We won't have the problems we had in the past. We tend to ignore those. So recent experiment that was reported in Harvard Business Review, ooh, that's prestigious. This one had to do with managers and estimates. No, we won't ask. The managers were given scenarios and asked to play out what should have been a set of typical problems on a project. And they made a fair number of mistakes, including estimations. And at the end, there was a debriefing session when the managers were gathered together for a little brainstorming, and they said, well, now tell us, were those unrealistic things that happened in those scenarios? And the manager said, oh, no, that's a typical project, really. We see that all the time. And they said, well, do you think that your decisions were good ones? Well, no, maybe not. Would there be better ways of handling those things? Oh, yes, we could come up with, and they did. They came up with much better solutions to all of the problems they had had on those projects, including the estimation. And they said, all right, let's run another scenario. Now, these were all intelligent people. After all, they were managers. Surely, having just gone through this brainstorming session and careful examination of the problems that they had solved, perhaps not in the best possible way, but now they had in their pockets good ideas that maybe they had forgotten along the way. In the rerunning of the scenario, what do you suppose they saw?
No change.
No change. They essentially made the same mistakes over and over again. And of course you're saying, oh well, managers. Oh well, those people. It's our eternal optimism. I saw this in a paper. A strong tendency to ignore previous feedback and persist in overconfidence in their own estimates have been observed in software development. Oh my goodness. I was a mathematician for a while, and so for a lot of large projects I was kind of thrown in with the estimating group. We had a whole group of people who estimated, and that was really exciting because in a large company usually there's a tool. Isn't that our favorite solution? A tool for estimates. And if you look under the hood of a lot of those estimation tools, they are so impressive. The mathematics is overwhelming. And you get caught up in it. And you say, wow, look at that. Surely this will solve our estimation problems. And of course, the sellers of those tools are biased. And they have a tendency to promise that these tools will solve all of your estimation problems because those tools come not only with all of that wonderful mathematics under the hood, but with data. Any kind of data you want. Small projects, medium-sized projects, big projects, embedded systems, it doesn't matter. Any programming language, they got it. So that if you don't have any data, not to worry. You can use our data until you have your own. Now, who wouldn't sign up? Who wouldn't sign up for $20,000 plus all the maintenance and training costs. I ask you, I was happy to be part of that team. I loved going for that training. I loved talking to the people who had developed that tool. They were mathematicians after all, and you could get lost in the mathematics. There was only really one problem. It didn't work. It just didn't work. We tried adjusting the parameters. We tried, it was fun. It was fun. Let's try adjusting these parameters, and now let's crank out. Yes, it just didn't work. I was disappointed. It changed my point of view about estimation. Now what we know about the brain is that those tools were doing calculations. The part of the brain that does calculations sits kind of in the front here, right above your eyes. And it behaves in a very different way from the part that does estimation, which sits in the back, and requires something called reflection. It's not following an algorithm. It's thinking about what's happening. And the tools were not doing that. They were providing us with a calculation answer, which isn't really the subject of estimation at all. We were totally wrong in how we decided to solve that problem. We have to realize that whether we're doing it on our own or whether tools are doing it, that the pathways that are involved in our own internal computer are doing different things. So is there no hope? So you know I was going to tie this to Agile development somehow. Right? Now, I'm a believer in small steps. I'm a believer that our only hope is by chopping things up into little pieces. And we will never be perfect at estimation. In fact, I have to disillusion a lot of teams I work with when I say, you know, your estimates, you hope your estimates will get better over time, but you'll never be perfect. And I loved what Martin said today when he was quoting Kent Beck. Perfect. That's not an adjective. It's perfect. It's a verb. It's about learning. It's about improving. It's not about getting there and suddenly having the answer or the perfect estimation. It's just not going to happen. It's always about experimentation. And what we know, because we are so optimistic and because we deceive ourselves and others, is that this is not something you can do as an individual. Your estimates will always be inflated because you are deceiving yourself. It has to be something that involves others on your team. It's the same reason why we have a retrospective with the collection of individuals who were involved in the project. Because what you see is distorted. It's only by involving the viewpoint of everyone else on a team that there's any hope at all of getting something close to reasonable. So it's an activity that can't be done by locking up a smart person in a room and saying, all right, Joe, come out in 10 minutes and tell me how you're going to deliver this by June. It's got to be an activity that involves everyone and the viewpoint of all the people on the team. So this isn't something that you can simply subscribe to and say, yes, we're an Agile team, and we do our estimates for every iteration, and yes, we follow all of those principles and we hold those values. You can't fake it. You have to be sincere. So I'm throwing this at the end because I stumbled across it in working with one team that was confused about something else, and that is forecasting. Forecasting is not estimation. Forecasting is about making a business decision. It involves different kinds of parameters and different kinds of results. When you provide an estimate, it is not solid knowledge. It is a guess. So there isn't a tool in the world that can crank out, I don't care what kind of complicated mathematics it uses, and give you a solution, an answer. It's a guess. That's all it is. And when you're honest about exactly what you're providing with an estimate, that's a part of, I think, what makes Agile great, is at least the attempt to be honest. So what we know is that there are a lot of advantages to deception. It enables us to get along with one another. It's maybe vital in our relationships. And in fact, I think there's a new book and a new movie coming out about what would the world be like if everyone was absolutely truthful all the time. Well, we have the answer to that. Because there are people, there's a subset of the population that is brutally honest 24/7. Now, unfortunately, they are all in mental institutions. Most of them on pretty serious medication. They're the ones who realize that if I understood exactly what you were thinking about me and about this talk, I probably wouldn't have the nerve to get up here and appear in front of you if I really knew what you were thinking, if you were brutally honest. So instead, I deceive myself. And I pretend that you found something useful in this presentation. And that perhaps you were able to take away a couple of things that might apply to your situation, or at the very least, that it was entertaining. And that I know a lot of you will come up afterwards and say, "Oh, Linda, that was a great talk." And we will both wonder, was he really? So I think that we're at the end. I don't have a real solid solution for you. I want you to be happy about deception. I don't want it to be a depressing thing. I don't want you to immediately, as I told my folks who were in the tutorial on influence, I don't want you to immediately rush out and begin analyzing every conversation to say, well, that was 10 minutes. I wonder how many. Don't do that. Don't do that. You'll drive yourself crazy. So thank you for your time. I think, hey, we're even on time. How's that? That's very good. So you can have your whole break. And if you want to come up and ask questions or talk to me, I'd be very happy to. I'm not lying about that.
Okay, questions to Linda?
I guess we could take questions or...
Okay,
You're
thank you,
happy.
Linda.
If you're happy, I'm happy.
That was horrible talk, by the way.
Oh, thank you.